Rezyl Azzir was a man. In time, his kind would be called Titan. Mountains of muscle and might and metal. His collar was fur and teeth, his person clad in ornate, golden-etched plating, trophies upon his shoulders. This was before the city was the city. This was before the walls, still in the shadow of the fragile giant above, but before. Salvation seekers came, survivors, weary remnants of a people on the brink. The giant was looked to as one would a god. Maybe it still is. Factions grew from the huddled masses, like minds coming together to provide support, comfort. Over time, these loyalties demanded loyalty, differences that used to inform, viewpoints that when joined granted a larger understanding of the whole, became points of conflict. The sanctuary became divided. The shadow of light grew darker. This, humanity's last oasis, was fading to a mirage. Great, powerful men and women, the risen, stood at the faction's sides. Protection, enforcers, misused possibility. Misery crept into this false paradise, yet hope lingered. Seeing the cracks in the society born beneath the giant's fractured shell, some among the risen challenged the dissolution of all that could be. They would no longer serve as instruments of oppression, they would be more. Thus began an unnecessary war made necessary by greed, ambition, fear. And in the chaos of the struggle came the scavengers, aliens with appetites, a common enemy. In the end, the scavengers were repelled and the factions fell, their grip broken, though their beliefs remained. This was the earliest days of the Guardians, when might found purpose, prosperity was in reach. Rezyl had become a champion of these wars, a leader. Against the alien pirates, he had been more. If the giant wasn't a god, then maybe Rezyl was. As the first walls formed, built of hard work and sacrifice, Rezyl and the Guardians stood against the alien plunderers time and again. More survivors arrived, more warriors. The Guardian ranks swelled, the city grew. Hope blossomed. To Rezyl it was a currency. Hope bought tomorrow. Tomorrow bought the effort needed to survive today. Yet Rezyl grew weary. Stories haunted his nights, old stories, those no longer told, those locked behind tight lips for fear of what they might invoke. Whenever the sun dropped below the horizon and the moon rose high, Rezyl's thoughts wandered. How safe was safe? How long could they fight with the darkness still writhing? So every day Rezyl would fight and build and protect. And every day a city grew beneath the giant, and every night he would think about all that was never said and stare intently at the moon above. This grimoire card is called Rezyl Azzir Before the Walls. It's found inside the Prison of Elders. I think this is rather interesting. It refers to a time before the Guardians were actually Guardians, where humanity was actually starting to structure the factions that we have today. And I'm going to make some references to the Book of Sorrows in here, which I think might interest you more than you'll realize. First of all, Rezyl Azzir was a human. He was one of the first Guardians, possibly the first Titan. His suit was in fur and teeth. He had gold and ornate pieces. I think this is possibly a reference to the crest of Alpha Lupe. There is a Titan version of this crest, and it reads, "Whoever survives our passing does so only by our consent." And by our passing, I don't think it means them dying, I think it means them passing through, and only by their consent. This is definitely referring to some of the earlier Guardians. And I think it refers to Guardians in general that this piece was made, because the Hunter version of the Crest of Alpha Lupe reads that you've heard every last tale of the wolf by now. None of them are true. You are the wolf, which is like the reaffirmment that the Crest of Alpha Lupe, the Alpha Lupe group of Guardians, might have been one of the factions created here, along with Dead Orbit, Monarch, all of them. But I think it's just in reference to the Guardians. The next part, before the city, before the walls, in the shadow of the traveler, says it's fragile. It talks about the shell of the traveler being fragile, and then it says, but before. So, is it referring to before the traveler was actually there, or before a particular incident that is what broke the shell of the traveler? Because at one point the traveler was whole, and now it has become broken and lifeless, possibly in the attack. It also talks about survivors continually coming to the city that's on the brink. I think this is reference to the city on the brink of war as factions surface between Guardians. This one I think is really interesting, although there's not too much to gain from it. It says, before reason took hold, before study was merged with belief, any sufficient technology is not discernible from magic. And they call it space magic, but it's probably just space technology. But a common theme within civilizations that technology is so advanced it's not discernible from magic is that their society holds an almost spiritual type of belief where they have a faith in the technology that works just because it works and they know it works. I mean, it's easy to have a faith and a belief in something when you can see it work. Gods of that nature. So I think this reference, before study was merged with belief, is the studying of creating this more successful technology as they move along. And you know what appears to them to be meditating, or the warlocks learning things, reading in these books, is them learning about this technology so sufficient that it appears to be magic. As the last city grew, factions started dividing the city into conflicts, and I think this is where Dead Orbit, New Monarchy, they started to form. Future War Cult as well, sorry, started to form these different factions which divided Guardian beliefs and started the war between them. The Risen. The Risen refer to Guardians, and this is found everywhere on multiple pieces. The Risen ones on the Warlock armband. What rules us is our service to the greater welfare of the city. That's just a statement for Guardians in general, I think. Mark of the Risen, you actually get that as a starting item as a Titan. It's your Titan mark. A Titan mark declares deeds and influences. Your ghost scrounge this class together. It's a start. So, yeah, Mark of the Risen. Guardians are the Risen. This is in reference to the Risen. And then the Guardians started picking sides of the factions, which ones they supported in terms of ideas and belief. This statement, the Risen challenged the disillusion of all that could be. This means that some of the Guardians challenged the partnership, or the official body of all that could be. These Guardians went against the factions, creating a war between the Guardians of greed and ambition and fear, based on greed, ambition, and fear, like most wars are based off of. I mean, even in today's society, our wars are based off greed, ambition, or fear. Usually greed or fear. Very rarely ambition. Then came the aliens, scavengers. I think this really clearly refers to the Fallen. Fallen are often looked at as scavengers, aliens with appetites. I don't know that we necessarily look at the Hive or the Vex as alien. We look at the Vex in a machine format, although the Vex are biological. And we look at the Hive as kind of like a space zombie creature. So aliens and scavengers, I think very clearly is talking here about the Fallen. This kind of broke the traction that there was between the factions fighting each other, and this created a unified faction to fight against the Fallen. But after time, the ideas of the factions still remained, and they're still there by Future War Cult, New Monarchy, and Dead Orbit, of course. once the Fallen were pushed back for the first time, then the walls began to be built, and more survivors started to come, more risen, more guardians, while the Fallen continually attacked the walls. There are references made in other Grimoire cards where it talks about the Fallen beating against the walls of the city. So there was a time before and after. The Fallen were probably waging war, or starting the war, before the walls were built and after the walls were built. And when Rezyl is referring to old stories that are no longer told, we do know of many stories within the Grimoire, particularly the story about Thorn and the Last Word. How guardians can go bad, and guardians can be corrupted by the darkness. The Book of Sorrows refers to the Hive, and how the Hive were drastically different originally, in terms of a species altogether. They don't look what they look like today. Similar, but not the same, not nearly as corrupted, and they lived on their own planet with the darkness and with the Traveler. Now, the Traveler influenced their society in one way, while the darkness influenced another half of their society in another, and this caused a war between their society, and the darkness won this war out. I think this is possibly hinting at the fact that the Traveler was influencing one half of the Guardians, and the darkness was influencing another half of the Guardians, which is what created the factions, which is what created the split between the city and started the war within the city itself. The fact that the Fallen just happened to come along to Earth wanting to pillage it and plunder it, which had us put aside our beliefs of what was going on and focus on surviving, might have been the only reason we survived the darkness or the Traveler, one of the two consuming our society. And I think those old stories, in particular the one relating to Thorn, or the fact that there's a comparison between warlocks and the Hive wizards, that there's a very bright comparison, and there's a Grimoire card somewhere in there that mentions that it seems like only the warlocks can understand what the wizards within the Hive are speaking to or talking about. They can understand their communication. I think that might show the similarity of the powers that they are given. I think these powers come from the Traveler itself. I think the Traveler will imbue a society with a gift, or imbue a society with technology so sufficient it can't be discerned from magic, okay? And then the darkness corrupts what it can of that. In some cases, the darkness wins out. But I think humanity was in the early stages. Because there's multiple stages of how the Traveler and the darkness affect a society. We see this within the Book of Sorrows. First, it starts out soft. The darkness has subtle nudges within humanity, trying to influence things one way or another. And then it becomes real hardcore, real quick. And I think we see some cases of that with Thorn and the Last Word, and how Thorn corrupted the Guardians so much that his own weapon took shape of what his being was in terms of how it killed people. And that is a case of a Guardian gone bad, afflicted by the darkness. So it did happen. Guardians were afflicted by the darkness, and that is what became of them. I think that's just the one instance Bungie is willing to tell us about at this time. So, to recap, Rezyl Azzir was one of the first Guardians, possibly the first Titan. I think our Golden Age is referring to before we started warring with the factions. It's still undecided. There is, especially when you talk to Rasputin or you read some of the Rasputin grimoires, there was a time when the darkness made like a direct onslaught at us, a direct assault. But because there's not enough information on that period about Rasputin, and like when you're finding Sleeper Stimulant, you'll read a lot of these logs, there's not a direct comparison or enough information to directly discern what was attacking us. It might have been the Hive, and that is how the Hive entered the galaxy, our known solar system. It might have been the Fallen, and that's how they came in. But I think our Golden Age was before the factions started warring, just before the factions started warring against each other. I think the Traveler brought the onset of the Golden Age, and it had been here for a long time after we had found it. And then the darkness slowly crept into our society. Because we don't have direct timeline estimations on some of this stuff, I think we're just going to have to wait for the DLC to confirm. By the way, the interesting thing about this, and the reason why I'm doing a video on this today, in case you do not know, how to find this ghost in relation to the Grimoire card went live. This ghost was added with the April update. How to find this ghost went on the Destiny Reddit within 17 minutes of the update going live. Now, even if you're on fiber, to update the game in 17 minutes, then to go into the Prison of Elders, and then to find this ghost, dude, that's pretty freaking slim odds, okay? Like, holy shit. And then he took the Destiny, he took the post down. In the thread discussing the dead ghost, though, with Rezyl Azzir, Rezyl Azzir wrote, he wrote Latin, which I'm not going to bother reading out loud. God, that's been a long time. But the Latin translates to roughly, the 20th day of the 9th month, it is coming forward to the stars, and it is in big caps. I think it is referring to the darkness. We are going. I think we are going to get to see what the darkness is in this September's update. I think we are going to learn about the past conflict with the Guardian, where that originated and where that came from, and I think the darkness is going to come through fruition in this because we just recently defeated Oryx. And for those of you that don't know the history of Oryx, Oryx ended up killing, well, I'll end up doing a separate video on that for those that are interested in Oryx, which I've been meaning to do for a long time. But hey, yeah, all this is in reference to the September 9th or September 20th update that's going to be coming this year. We already know it's going to be a huge expansion. Let's look at it this way. Normally we get content every 3 to 4 months from Destiny, and we got the House of Wolves and we got the Dark Below before we got the Taken King. And we have gotten no updates since the Taken King. So if we get no updates up to the Taken King, I am going to guess we could probably expect something the size of the Taken King again, or larger, this September. I would actually assume larger, because you also have to realize they were working on the House of Wolves and the Dark Below, as well as the Taken King. So I do think the update we're going to get this September is going to be larger, and it's going to cover a lot of stuff. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. This is my speculation and analysis of the new Rezyl Azzir Grimoire card, and I think it does actually reveal a lot about the future of Destiny. I'm pretty excited for the future. I don't care that much about the April update, but I'm pretty excited for the future. Hurry it up, Bungie! If you guys are new here, feel free to hit that sub button for more Destiny lore series or any other lore series, or just channel content in general. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you dislike it, tell me why in the comments, and what are your thoughts and theories about this? Please let me know in the comments below. I actually, I see this from my perspective in my mind, but there are people that are way more better at analyzing things than me. Maybe you see something that I don't, so please, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Feel free to check out the Patreon. It supports me and this channel and the continuous content. Patreon.com/3gunsdown. Thank you guys. I'll see you later.